Today, we're talking about a really powerful way to solve problems. It's an approach that used to be kind of niche, stuck in design studios, but now it's right at the heart of business strategy. It's a way of thinking that changes how companies innovate, how they connect with customers, and, as we're about to see, how one simple, almost absurd idea can fix a system that feels hopelessly broken.
I mean, think about it. You've been there, right? Dealing with some mind-numbing bureaucracy or a piece of tech that just makes no sense. A service that's supposed to help people but just doesn't. When a system is that tangled up, where do you even start to pull at the threads?
Yeah, a Winnebago. I know, it sounds like the start of a bad joke, but you gotta stick with me here, because this isn't a hypothetical. It is the actual beginning of an incredible story about how one totally unexpected idea completely transformed a system for people who desperately needed it. Okay, so our story starts with the Golden Gate Regional Center. Let's just call it GGRC. They provide really vital services for people with developmental disabilities out in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they were up against a massive problem. The solution? Well, it came from a place nobody ever would have guessed. So here's the deal, the old way. If you were a family trying to get help for your child, you had to go through this long, confusing, and frankly, soul-crushing process. We're talking endless meetings, driving to offices you've never been to, evaluations with specialist after specialist. It was just draining. Then came the experiment. What if, instead of making families come to this broken system, the system came to them? In a Winnebago?
Get this. That old process took, on average, 3 months, sometimes longer. Just let that sink in. 3 months of waiting and stress. It was so hard, so drawn out that a lot of parents, totally overwhelmed, just gave up. And that meant their kids weren't getting the help they needed. So, facing this crisis, GGRC pairs up with Stanford University's D-School. And the D-School folks encouraged them to think of some really out there, even absurd ideas just to shake things up. Someone actually joked, hey, why don't we just drive a Winnebago out to them? And instead of laughing it off, the Stanford team said, okay, let's do it. They took this idea from GGRC's head, Lisa Rosene, and ran with it. They were literally going to meet families where they are.
And the results? They were just staggering. In a few hours, the team did 9 full assessments. The entire process, from that very first meeting to a family actually getting services, was slashed from over 3 months down to just 1 week. 1 week. And it wasn't just faster, it was kinder, it was more human, and it worked so much better for everyone. Now, this amazing story isn't really about a clever trick with an RV. That Winnebago you see was a prototype. It was an experiment, and it was born from a whole way of working called design thinking, which is shaking up organizations all over the place. So, what is design thinking? Let's break it down. At its heart, it's a framework for solving problems creatively. And let's be super clear, this isn't about making things look pretty. It's a get-your-hands-dirty approach that stands on 3 main pillars: having real empathy for the people you're designing for, a passion for building quick prototypes, and being totally okay with failure. Because that's how you learn. And why does this matter so much right now? Well, because our world is just complicated. From the software on our phones to the healthcare system, things can get so overwhelming. Design thinking is the tool that helps you cut through all that noise. It's about making our world simpler, more intuitive, and just more human. All right, let's really dig into those core principles. And we can see every single one of them in that GGRC story. The first one, and honestly, it's the most important, is empathy. This is way more than just knowing what a user does. It's about understanding how they feel. Design thinking is obsessed with that emotional journey, the hopes, the dreams, and the frustrations that a person has when they interact with your product or your service. Here's exactly how GGRC did it. They literally mapped out the entire process with a bunch of Post-it notes. But here's the genius part. They didn't just map the steps. They mapped the emotions people were feeling at each point. And that's where they had their breakthrough. The real problem wasn't one single step. It was the agonizing, unpredictable waiting in between all the steps that was driving people crazy.
Okay, so that big aha moment leads right into the second principle. You have to take action. Instead of getting bogged down in meetings and endless analysis, design thinkers build things. They make prototypes. And these aren't fancy finished products. They're rough models, quick sketches, or, a rented Winnebago. They are tools you build to learn. The MIT Media Lab has a motto that just captures this perfectly. Demo or die. An idea in your head is pretty cheap. It only gets valuable when you make it real, when you create something people can see and touch and react to. That Winnebago, it wasn't the final answer for GGRC, not at all. But as a prototype, as a learning tool, it was priceless. It showed them a whole new way forward. Now, of course, if you're constantly trying new things, a lot of them aren't going to work. And that brings us to principle number 3. You have to be cool with failure. It's not about punishing mistakes. It's about looking at failure as just part of the price you pay for innovating and learning what actually works. And this isn't just for scrappy little teams. I mean, think about Apple. We all see them as a pinnacle of design. We celebrate the iPhone. But for every iPhone, there was a failure, like the Newton tablet or the Pippin gaming system. Apple used those failures to learn. It's a core part of this whole mindset. So this whole way of thinking has set off a huge shift. Design thinking isn't just for nonprofits or tech startups anymore. Nope, some of the world's biggest companies are jumping in with both feet. This quote from a senior VP at IBM, it just says it all. You can't separate your business strategy from your customer's experience anymore. They're not two different things. They're the same thing. Companies are finally getting that great design isn't just some nice little feature, it's everything. And they are putting their money where their mouth is. IBM is dropping over $100 million to hire 1,000 designers. GE is baking design right into its massive industrial business. And the biggest consulting firms on the planet, Deloitte, McKinsey, they're just straight up buying top design firms. In today's world, it's not a nice to have, it's table stakes. Okay, so as we start to wrap this up, let's boil it all down. What are the key things we can all learn from the GGRC story and actually use in our own work, in our own lives? It comes down to 3 big lessons. Number 1, you have to find a way to see your work through your customer's eyes. Really build that empathy. Number 2, look for the broken parts between teams. The problem is almost never one person's fault. It's usually in the gaps. And number 3, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You got to push yourself to try the weird, impractical, even absurd ideas, because that is where the breakthroughs live. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. We all have those complex, frustrating problems in our lives. So what's your Winnebago idea? What's the absurd, maybe even silly-sounding thing you could try? Not as the final answer, but just as a way to start learning. Think about it. Thanks for tuning in.